और the other one मैंने कहा था जिसपे कॉपी लिखा हुआ है. अच्छा ठीक है. Okay. Assalamu alaikum students. We are doing liver and biliary tract. As all of you know, yesterday we did Wilson's disease and alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. I hope these things are clear. Today we are going to do with the tumors and nodules of the liver. And I also did cirrhosis with you yesterday. So let me open it first. Okay. We are going to do classification of the tumors of the liver. The classification is like this. There are benign tumors in the liver and there are malignant tumors in the liver. Under the heading of benign tumors, we have nodular hyperplasia. Nodular hyperplasia is again of two types, focal nodular hyperplasia and nodular regenerative hyperplasia. Then other benign tumors are hemangioma, adenoma, and liver cyst. I am going to explain one by one. Then there are malignant tumors of the liver, which are primary malignant tumors of the liver. That is, means they are arising from the hepatocytes. They are hepatocellular carcinoma, also designated as HCC, fibrolamellar carcinoma, hepatoblastoma, cholangiocarcinoma, and then there are metastatic carcinomas, which are coming either from the breast or any other organs in the body, like lung or any other organ, especially from GIT tumors, they metastasize to the liver. They are known as metastatic carcinomas. So we have benign tumors and we have malignant tumors, primary and metastatic. We are first going to discuss the benign tumors, then we are going to discuss the malignant tumors. In the benign, number one is nodular hyperplasia. Nodular hyperplasia, there are two conditions which lead to nodular hyperplasia in the liver. Number one is focal nodular hyperplasia and number two is nodular regenerative hyperplasia. Under the heading of focal nodular hyperplasia, it appears as well demarcated, poorly encapsulated nodules which can vary in size to many centimeters and appears in young to middle-aged individuals. The area is it is lighter than the surrounding liver area and it is yellow because of presence of steatosis or fatty chain. So the nodular hyperplasia is a hyperplasia of the liver parenchymal cells which are poorly encapsulated, appears in the younger individuals or middle-aged. It is lighter than the surrounding liver parenchyma because of the appearance of presence of fat in it or steatosis. The central scar contains large blood vessels. There is hyperplasia of the fibromuscular wall of the artery with narrowing of the lumen. The septa show ductular reaction. Parenchyma between septa is composed of normal hepatocytes which are separated by thick sinusoidal plates. So on microscopic appearance, there is a central scar which contains the large blood vessels with the hyperplasia of the fibromuscular wall of the artery and the septa which are originating, they show ductular reaction. I have told you what is a ductular reaction. It is the presence of many bile ducts present within this fibrous tissue septas. The parenchyma between septas is composed of normal-looking hepatocytes which are separated by sinusoidal plates, but these are thick sinusoids as compared to the normal liver. It occurs because of the congenital vascular lesions. Hypoperfused areas undergo fibrosis and hyperperfused area undergo hyperplasia. Hypoperfuse means where the blood supply is less, these areas undergo fibrosis, and where there is blood circulation is more, these areas undergo hyperplasia, leading to focal nodular hyperplasia within the liver parenchyma. So in this picture, you can see this is the nodule of the liver. You can see it is lighter in color than the normal liver, and yellowish appearance is because of the fatty chain. Here you can see septas, in which you can see blood vessel, and this is the ductular reaction which is present. And these are hepatocytes with thick sinusoidal plates. Next is the nodular regenerative hyperplasia. In the nodular regenerative hyperplasia, liver entirely is transformed into nodules on the gross appearance, which are similar to micronodular cirrhosis, and this is without fibrosis. The liver parenchyma gets a nodular appearance instead of a normal smooth appearance on the gross appearance, and these nodules do not have fibrous tissue septas in them. There is no fibrosis or cirrhosis accompanying this nodular regenerative hyperplasia. Microscopically, we see plump hepatocytes which are surrounded by a rim of atrophic hepatocytes. Microscopically, the hepatocytes show a plump appearance, that means they are larger in size and appear plump means they are more in size as compared to the normal hepatocytes, and they are surrounded by atrophic hepatocytes in the surrounding area. Nodular regenerative hyperplasia can lead to development of portal hypertension, and it occurs in association with conditions affecting intrahepatic blood flow like renal transplant, hematopoietic stem cell transplant, and vasculitis, also seen in patients with systemic lupus erythematosus and AIDS patients. So nodular hyperplasia nodules are seen within the liver parenchyma, composed of plump hepatocytes surrounded by atrophic hepatocytes, and there is no fibrous tissue septa in between. There is no cirrhosis, and this can lead to portal hypertension, which I've already explained to you, because of the blood supply is not going back normally through the portal circulation because of these presence of nodule leading to portal hypertension, and this condition occurs because of the renal transplant, hematopoietic cell transplant, or vasculitis, and also shown in patients with SLE and AIDS patients. So this is the nodular hyperplasia and focal nodular hyperplasia. Focal nodular hyperplasia and focal nodular regenerative hyperplasia. Okay. So next is in the benign tumors is cavernous hemangioma. Cavernous hemangioma is important because its slide comes as a OSPE slide. So it is an important tumor. It is a benign tumor, essentially benign. You do not have to do anything with the patients. The patients do live with it. There is, and obviously, you know, benign tumors, they do not metastasize. Cavernous hemangiomas are benign vascular tumors present in the liver. They appear as discrete red-blue nodules on the surface of the liver, if they are present on the surface, or they can be present anywhere within the substance of the liver. They can be less than 2 centimeters in size, and under the capsule, they appear red-blue nodules. Microscopically, they consist of vascular dilated channels with fibroconnective tissue and lined by endothelial cells. On ultrasound, they can mimic as tumor, but they're essentially benign tumors. This is the micrograph of a cavernous hemangioma. You can see thick blood vessel, dilated blood vessel. These are all dilated vascular channels of blood vessels. You can see lined by thin endothelium, and the lumen contains hemorrhage. And this is the surrounding normal hepatocytes or normal parenchyma of the liver. So this is also a picture photomicrograph of cavernous hemangioma. You can see markedly dilated vascular channels lined by thin endothelium and containing hemorrhage and surrounded by liver parenchyma. But this parenchyma shows some fibrosis as well. This is a typical picture of cavernous hemangioma in the liver. On this side, you can see normal looking hepatocyte. This is a biliary tract, and you can see these large vascular spaces lined by endothelial cells divided by fibrous tissues, connective tissue septa. Okay, so these 3 slides can be your OSPE exam, but obviously in OSPE all this is not going to be written. You have to diagnose the lesion with 2 points of identification. You can say these are dilated channels, number 1, and number 2 you can say lined by thin endothelial lining, and number 3 you can also say they contain hemorrhage or the blood within them. So this was cavernous hemangioma. Next is hepatocellular adenomas. Hepatocellular adenomas are benign neoplasms which arise from the hepatocyte. They are also called hepatocellular adenomas. The etiology is that both oral contraceptives and anabolic steroids are associated with the development of adenoma. The risk of developing these adenomas is increased 30 to 40 folds in the use of oral contraceptives. Cessation of exposure to sex hormones often can lead to full regression of these adenomas. 3 large subtypes are identified. So, hepatocellular adenomas are benign neoplasms which arise from hepatocytes called hepatocellular adenomas. Oral contraceptive and anabolic steroids are associated with its development, and the risk of developing these adenomas increases to 30 to 40 folds with the use of oral contraceptive drugs. Cessation of exposure to sex hormone can lead to full regression of these adenomas. 3 large subtypes are seen. Number 1 is HNF1 alpha, hepatocyte nuclear factor 1 alpha, inactivated hepatocellular adenoma. Number 2 is beta catenin hepatocellular adenoma. And number 3 is inflammatory hepatocellular adenoma. So I'm going to go one by one with each. So number 1 is HNF alpha inactivated hepatocellular adenoma, means hepatocyte nuclear factor 1 alpha inactivated hepatocellular adenoma. 90% have somatic mutation and 10% have germline mutation of HNF1 alpha gene. Somatic means that they are present in the cells after the cell division. These mutations are going to be transferred to the daughter cells. And germline mutation means that they are present in the ovum or sperm at the time of birth. Okay, so there is HNF1 alpha inactivated hepatocellular adenoma. 90% occurs in the somatic mutations after the birth of the individual, and in 10% germline mutations of HNF1 alpha genes are seen. Heterozygous germline mutation of HNF1 alpha gene are responsible for the autosomal dominant maturity onset diabetes of young type 3 as well. So HNF1 alpha inactivated hepatocellular adenoma, 90% cases occur because of somatic mutation and 10% occur because of the germline mutations. And this mutation is also responsible for the maturity onset diabetes of young patients, type 3. So in HNF1 alpha inactivated hepatocellular adenoma, patients who develop hepatocellular adenoma have acquired a second mutation. Lesions are found in females and oral contraceptive are implicated in some cases. So HNF1 alpha inactivated hepatocellular adenomas are also going to be seen more commonly in females who use oral contraceptive agents. And these patients have acquired a second mutation in their life. Number 2 pathogenesis is beta-catenin hepatocellular adenoma. Beta-catenin mutations may give rise to hepatocellular adenomas. These are very high risk for malignancy and they should be resected even when they are asymptomatic. They are associated with oral contraceptives and anabolic steroid use as well. They are found both in men and women. So number 2 is beta-catenin hepatocellular adenoma. They are also associated with risk of oral contraceptive use and steroid use, anabolic steroid use, and found both in men and women. Number 3 is inflammatory hepatocellular adenoma. These are associated with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I have explained to you what is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease already. Their incidence is increasing and they have high risk of malignant transformation and they should be resected even when they are asymptomatic. Activating mutations in the GP130, a co-receptor for interleukin-6 that leads to JAK-STAT signaling pathway and overexpression of acute phase reactants are seen in inflammatory type of hepatocellular adenoma. Interleukin-6 mediated JAK-STAT signaling is also associated with hepatocellular carcinoma. So these are highly malignant and they can lead to HCC as well because the same mutations are present in inflammatory hepatocellular adenoma as in the HCC hepatocellular carcinoma. So there are 3 types of adenomas: HNF1 alpha inactivated hepatocellular adenoma, beta-catenin hepatocellular adenoma, and inflammatory hepatocellular adenoma. I have explained you the pathogenesis of one by one. Now we are going to see the morphology. Morphology, you know, is a gross and microscopic appearance. In HNF1 alpha inactivated hepatocellular adenoma, these adenomas are often fatty and devoid of cellular and architectural atypia. So they are like they should be removed, but they have no chances of becoming malignant because they are often fatty and they are devoid of cellular and architectural atypia. No changes in the cell morphology and architecture is seen. Liver fatty acid binding protein, which is LFABP, is expressed in all hepatocytes, but it's absent in these tumors due to mutation of HNF1 alpha gene. Immunostaining demonstrating absence of LFABP is diagnostic of these mutations. So microscopically, when we do immunohistochemistry, the liver fatty acid binding protein, which is normally expressed in all the liver cells or hepatocyte, is absent in the cells of these adenoma. And this is the most diagnostic criteria for seeing that this is an HNF1 inactivated hepatocellular adenoma. Okay, I hope this is clear. Next is beta-catenin mutated hepatocellular adenomas. They have high degree of cytological and architectural dysplasia, or even areas of hepatocellular carcinomas can be seen in them. So beta-catenin mutated hepatocellular adenoma is a highly is a tumor with a highly cytological and architectural dysplasia. So these tumors can also develop into hepatocellular carcinoma, or if there is an adenoma, you can see sometimes areas of HCC within this as well. Immunostaining for beta-catenin usually show nuclear translocation, which is indicative of its activated state. This change is diagnostic. So the diagnosis is by immunohistochemistry that we have to stain for beta-catenin. If beta-catenin is present in the nucleus, it means it is an activated state, and this change is diagnostic to diagnose the adenoma because of beta-catenin mutation. Okay. Glutamine synthetase, which is also target of beta-catenin, normally present in perivenular hepatocyte, is also diffusely positive in these cells. And this is even seen when beta-catenin mutation does not result in nuclear staining. Molecular analysis is necessary for the definitive confirmation of beta-catenin mutated hepatocellular adenoma. So it means that we have to do staining for beta-catenin. If this is going to be absent, then we have to do staining for glutamine synthetase. This is always present. And these are the two bases to diagnose beta-catenin mutated hepatocellular adenoma. The diagnosis is basically confirmed on immunohistochemistry. Number 3 is inflammatory hepatocellular adenoma. These lesions, in addition to having hepatocytes and vessels, they have fibrotic stoma, mononuclear inflammation, ductular reaction, dilated sinusoids, and telangiectatic vessels. So microscopically, morphologically, hepatocellular adenomas, in addition to have hepatocytes, these and vessels, they have a stoma which is composed of fibrous tissue, and there is inflammatory infiltrate which is composed of mononuclear, that is plasmalymphocytic. Ductular reaction, the small bile duct proliferation is also seen with dilated sinusoid, and telangiectatic vessels are also the vessels which are dilated and can be seen on the surface of the tumor. Most of these tumors overexpress acute phase reactant proteins such as C-reactive proteins and serum amyloid A protein. They are also elevated in the serum. 10% of these inflammatory hepatocellular adenoma also show an activation because of the beta-catenin. Okay, so 10% also show mutation of beta-catenin. So this is the adenoma. You can see on the gross appearance, this is normal looking liver. You can see this is an adenoma present. It is sharply demarcated from the rest of the liver parenchyma. You can see these cells. There is a vessel and these hepatocytes, but you cannot see the normal sinusoids which are present in the normal liver architecture. This is the low power view of the adenoma. You can see a well demarcated lighter color adenoma, and this is all the peripheral normal liver parenchyma. Okay, so this is the hepatic adenoma in the low power view. Now we are going to go to the malignant tumors of the liver. So if you are going to repeat the benign tumors, I am going to repeat again. So in order to remember all this, there is nodular hyperplasia of two types, focal nodular hyperplasia and nodular regenerative hyperplasia. Number 2 tumor, which I have told you is of your interest, is cavernous hemangioma, and it is very important from your exam point of view and your OSPE point of view. And it is a very simple, you can see dilated vascular channels lined by thin endothelium containing blood in them and normal liver parenchyma in the surrounding area. So you have to do 2 points of identification. I have already told you what are these two. And then we have benign hepatocellular adenomas. They are of 3 types: HNF1 alpha, beta-catenin, and inflammatory hepatocellular adenoma. I have told you the pathogenesis and morphology one by one. So next we are going to see malignant tumors of the liver. The primary malignant tumors of the liver, I have told you, are hepatocellular carcinoma, designated as HCC. It is the primary tumor of the liver arising from the hepatocytes. Then other is cholangiocarcinoma, which is from the bile duct origin, and number 3 is hepatoblastoma, which is a rare form of primary liver carcinoma seen in children under mostly 3 years of age. And then there are metastatic tumors which can arise from anywhere in the body and can metastasize to the liver parenchyma. So I'm going to deal with the one by one primary malignant tumors of the liver. Hepatoblastoma. First, we'll discuss what is hepatoblastoma. It is the most common tumor of the early childhood, rarely occurs after 3 years of age. It has 2 variants. Number 1 is epithelial type, which is composed of small polygonal hepatocyte fetal-like cells or small embryonal cells forming acinar tubules or papillary structures recapitulating the liver development. So there are 2 variants. Number 1 is epithelial variant, which is composed of small polygonal fetal cells or small embryonal cells forming acini. Acini are gland-like spaces or tubules. Only tubules can be seen as elongated spaces with a lumen or papillary structure. Papillary structure, all of you know, is a papilla having a core, fibrous tissue core surrounded by epithelial cells. They recapitulate the normal liver development. Number two variant can be mixed epithelial and mesenchymal, which contain foci of mesenchymal differentiation. Mesenchymal are mesenchymal tissue, which is fibrous tissue that may contain primitive mesenchyme, like primitive osteoid, cartilage, or striated muscles can be present, and epithelial element will again be in the form of acini glands or tubule formation, or can be present in between the primitive mesenchymal stroma. So this is hepatoblastoma. You can see these cells, they appear like primitive liver cells. They are in groups and they can also form tubules and acini as well. Next malignant tumor is hepatocellular carcinoma. It is a very malignant tumor, and I have, with each chronic hepatitis, I have told you that this hepatitis can develop into cirrhosis and hepatocellular carcinoma. I hope you remember. Hepatocellular carcinoma. It is 5.4% of all cancers, but its incidence varies widely in different parts of the world. So hepatocellular carcinoma is the primary malignant tumor of the liver, and it is 5.4% of all cancers, but its incidence varies widely in different parts of the world. More than 85% of cases occur in countries where there is chronic hepatitis B viral infection, like Asia, Southeast China, mostly Korea and Japan. Hepatitis B virus is transmitted vertically in a carrier state and starts in infancy, and in 50% of cases, hepatocellular carcinoma develops without cirrhosis between 20 to 40 years of age. So those areas of the world where hepatitis B viral infections are very common, like Southeast Asia, China, Korea, and Japan, there the vertical transmission means that the child gets hepatitis B viral infection in infancy, and the child can develop hepatocellular carcinoma without even developing cirrhosis by the when he or she reaches the age 20 to 40 years. Risk of the hepatocellular carcinoma is decreasing in China, Singapore, and Hong Kong because of the hepatitis B viral vaccination. Vaccination against hepatitis B virus. Okay. So those areas where hepatitis B viral infection is more common, they are more prone to develop HCC, and because of the vertical transmission in the childhood, and these people, when they become adults by 20 to 40, they can develop hepatocellular carcinoma without developing a cirrhosis. But because of the advent of the vaccine against the hepatitis B viral, the incidence of HCC has decreased in these parts of the world as well. In the Western countries, incidence of hepatocellular carcinoma is increasingly due to hepatitis C epidemic. Its incidence is tripled in USA, but 8 to 34 lower than in Asian countries. So though the HCC is also because of the hepatitis C viral infection, and it is seen mostly in those countries like Asian countries, but in Western countries it has also increased because of the epidemic of hepatitis C virus. In Western population, hepatocellular carcinoma rarely manifests before the age of 60, and in 90% of cases, it occurs after cirrhosis. Male to female ratio is 3 to 1. In low incidence areas and in high incidence areas, it is 8 to 1. Means men are more frequently affected as compared to female, both in the low and high incidence areas, and this gender differentiation is not known. And we really do not know what is the gender imbalance in the development of hepatocellular carcinoma. Okay, so this is the incidence. Pathogenesis. There are many factors which can lead to hepatocellular carcinoma. The most important are viral infection by hepatitis B virus and hepatitis C virus. I have really emphasized in these lectures of hepatitis B virus and C virus that chronic hepatitis leading to cirrhosis can go into hepatocellular carcinoma. I hope you remember that. So hepatocellular carcinoma, the most important factors are viral infection by hepatitis B viral infection and hepatitis C viral infection. Others are toxic injuries by aflatoxin and alcohol. Aflatoxin, which is produced by Aspergillus species, is a mycotoxin that contaminates staple food like crops, and aflatoxin metabolites are present in the urine of affected individuals, and aflatoxin albumin adducts are present in the serum of patients who are having hepatocellular carcinoma. Aflatoxin also synergizes with hepatitis B virus and C virus. It means that those patients who are suffering from hepatitis B and C virus, and in them, if there is aflatoxin over the above, they get aflatoxin infection, then there is going to be synergism, means that more chances of getting into hepatocellular carcinoma. They, because of the presence of hepatitis B and C virus. The other causes are alcohol. Alcohol itself is a risk factor for hepatocellular carcinoma, but also synergizes with hepatitis B virus, C virus, and smoking. The next is metabolic diseases like hereditary hemochromatosis, alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. They also markedly increases the risk of HCC, as I've told you in the yesterday's lecture. Metabolic syndrome associated with obesity, diabetes mellitus, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, they all increase the risk of hepatocellular carcinoma. So in the pathogenesis, the most important factors are viral infection, hepatitis B virus, hepatitis C virus. Number 2 is toxic injuries by aflatoxin and alcohol. Then metabolic diseases like hereditary hemochromatosis, alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, metabolic syndrome associated with obesity, diabetes mellitus, and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, they all increase the risk of hepatocellular carcinoma. Pathogenesis. Activation of beta-catenin is seen in 40% of cases, and inactivation of P53 are seen in 60% of hepatocellular carcinoma. These are two early mutations which are present in the cases of hepatocellular carcinoma. So you know beta-catenin, this is also involved in the colorectal carcinoma. Beta-catenin APC pathway and microsatellite instability pathway, if you have remember. So the activation of beta-catenin is also involved in the production of hepatocellular carcinoma. And number 2 factor is inactivation of P53. P53 gene, you all know, is a genome which is there for the DNA repair mechanism. When the DNA is damaged, P53 halts the cell cycle in the G1 phase for the DNA to get repaired. If the DNA is not going to be repaired, the cell is undergoing to go apoptosis. But if there is inactivation of P53, its function is lost, and this DNA damaged cell will replicate, and 60% of the hepatocellular carcinoma inactivation of P53 gene is seen. These tumors are also associated with aflatoxin, as I already told you, and role of signaling through interleukin-6 JAK-STAT pathway in hepatocellular carcinoma seen in the experimental animals. Transcriptional factor, which is hepatocyte nuclear factor 4 alpha, uncoupling will suppress hepatic carcinogenesis from control of interleukin-6. So all these factors are involved in the pathogenesis of hepatocellular carcinoma. And I told you in the etiology, we have these viral antigens, toxic injuries, metabolic diseases, and metabolic syndrome, and inactivation of beta-catenin and activation of beta-catenin and inactivation of P53 are responsible for hepatocellular carcinoma. Interleukin-6 JAK-STAT pathway is involved, and transcription factor HNF4 alpha uncoupling will suppress hepatic carcinogenic effect by interleukin-6. Precursor lesions. There are certain precursor lesions in the hepatocellular carcinoma. Several nodular and precursor lesions can also lead to hepatocellular carcinoma. They have been identified. This is number 1, can be beta-catenin associated hepatocellular adenoma, as we have already discussed. Small cell change, it is directly pre-malignant. Large cell change in the hepatocyte is also marker of HCC in the liver, but in hepatitis B, this is directly pre-malignant. Okay, so these are the precursor lesion, or these lesions can change into hepatocellular carcinoma. Precursor lesion means which will eventually change into hepatocellular carcinoma. Beta precursor lesions in the case of HCC are beta-catenin, small cell chain, large cell chain. Precursor lesion in HCC continued is like dysplastic nodules. They are seen in cirrhosis. Size and vascular supply is different from the rest of the cirrhotic liver. Low-grade dysplastic nodule and high-grade dysplastic nodules. So these are, if they are all of or one of this can be present in the liver, they can lead to hepatocellular carcinoma. These are precursor lesion for HCC, beta-catenin, small cell chain, large cell chain, precursor dysplastic nodules, low-grade dysplastic nodules, or high-grade dysplastic nodules. Morphologically, large cell chain is scattered hepatocyte near portal tracts or septas, larger than the normal hepatocyte with large, often multiple moderately pleomorphic nuclei. So if the large cells are present around the portal tracts, around the hepatocytes in the portal tract. They are larger than the normal hepatocyte and they have pleomorphic nuclei, means variation in size and shape of the nuclear morphology is seen. Small cell chain cells, they have high NC ratio, mild nuclear hyperchromasia is seen as well with pleomorphism. Small cell form tiny expansile nodules within the single parenchymal nodule. Low-grade dysplastic nodules. Low-grade dysplastic nodules they are devoid of cytological or architectural atypia. They are clonal and probably neoplastic rather than simply large cirrhotic nodules. Portal tracts are still present in these nodules. High-grade dysplastic nodules, they have features suggestive of but still insufficient for the diagnosis of hepatocellular carcinoma. Such atypia is seen as a nodule within a large nodule. Portal tracts are fewer in these nodules. So low-grade dysplastic nodules do not show much of a cytological atypia and they can be clonal and probably neoplastic rather than simply large cirrhotic nodules. Still portal tracts is present in them. In high-grade dysplastic nodules, they have features suggestive of, but still the features are not that suggestive that you can label them as HCC under the microscope. Such atypia is seen as a nodule within a larger nodule. Portal tracts are fewer in these nodules. Okay, morphologically, hepatocellular carcinoma on the gross appearance can be unifocal, multifocal, or diffusely infiltrative. Unifocal means that one large unifocal mass, one mass is seen. Multifocal, that widely distributed nodules of variable sizes can be seen. Diffusely infiltrative carcinoma, permeating widely and involving the entire of the liver. In all of these categories, the liver size is going to enlarge. ACC may be pale as compared to the surrounding tissue, or they have different appearance. Okay. Microscopically, hepatocellular carcinoma can range from well-differentiated to highly anaplastic lesions. It means that they capsulate well-differentiated forms, the normal liver architecture, but highly anaplastic can take any shape and form. Well-differentiated tumors, they look like normal hepatocytes. They grow in structures which are distortion of the normal thickened trabecular structure or pseudo-glandular pattern. They are poorly formed ectatic bile canal nuclei are present as well. So well-differentiated forms have normal-looking hepatocyte which grow in structures with the distortion of obviously normal architecture. Thickened trabecular structure or pseudo-glandular pattern can be seen, and there can be ectatic bile canal nuclei as well. Another very important variant is fibrolamellar pattern seen in hepatocellular carcinoma. In the case of fibrolamellar pattern, less than 5% of hepatocellular carcinoma are of this type. They are seen in people which are less than 35 years of age. They present as a large serous tumor with fibrous bands. Serous means hard tumor. I've told you serous reaction that when there is a fibrous tissue proliferation around a tumor, it makes it hard, and this is called a serous tumor. Microscopically, they are composed of well-differentiated cells which are rich in mitochondria, growing in nests and cords separated by dense collagen bundles. So these are the photomicrograph of hepatocellular carcinoma. This is the hepatocellular carcinoma. You can see it is the reddish in color, the normal hepatocyte, but it has a yellowish color. And you can see the anaplastic hepatocyte, but you can still see the sinusoidal spaces present in between. This is also a low power view of well-differentiated. These are normal hepatocytes. You can see the hepatocellular carcinoma on this side. These all the cells are forming gland-like structure. Some are forming tubules and some are in sheets as well. This is also hepatocellular carcinoma. You can see the large cells. They are atypical nuclei, pleomorphic nuclei, and they are forming pseudoglandular pattern as well. Okay, and this is fibrolamellar hepatocellular carcinoma. You can see hepatocyte. These are all malignant, surrounded by fibrous tissue septa. This is serous or it is hard in consistency, and this is the gross appearance. Okay, I hope this morphology is clear. That hepatocellular carcinoma, first I've told you what are the large cell chain, small cell chain, low-grade dysplastic nodule, and high-grade dysplastic nodule. Then I told you the gross appearance, they have unifocal, multifocal, diffusely infiltrative. They can be well differentiated to anaplastic. And then I told you what is a fibrolamellar pattern. Morphologically, intrahepatic metastasis can be seen in this hepatocellular carcinoma by either vascular invasion or direct extension into the liver parenchyma, and likely when tumor is 3 centimeter in size. These are small satellite tumor nodules around the larger primary mass. Metastasis outside the liver is through the vascular route to the lungs, which occur late, Long snake-like tumor masses can invade the portal vein, and they can even go into the inferior vena cava and into the right side of the heart like in a snake pattern. Lymph node metastases are less common route of spread of these tumors. So the metastasis can be either intrahepatic because of the vascular invasion or because of the direct extension, or the metastasis can be to the from the liver to the lung because of the hematogenous route or through the bloodstream. And these can also go into the portal tract and inferior vena cava and can travel like a snake-like mass to the right side of the heart. And lymph node metastasis is less common in hepatocellular carcinoma as compared to the other carcinomas. The clinical features, the patient will present, they have no characteristic feature, or sometimes there are features like which can be present, but sometimes features are masked by cirrhosis of the liver, because patient has cirrhosis, then it develops into HCC. Vague upper abdominal pain, malaise, fatigue, weight loss, abdominal mass can be the presenting signs and symptoms. Jaundice is sometimes present with fever or gastrointestinal esophageal varices. They are inconstant finding. Serum alpha fetoprotein levels are high because the neoplastic hepatocytes, they secrete serum alpha fetoprotein. It is a tumor marker for HCC, but it is not a specific marker because many tumors produce serum alpha fetoprotein. This can be your viva question as well. Okay, what kind of serum marker is produced by hepatocellular carcinoma? Okay, and this is alpha fetoprotein, which can be seen in 50% of cases, but it is not, because many tumors can produce alpha fetoproteins. Imaging studies, ultrasound are helpful in diagnosing indistinct masses. The 5-year survival rate is very low. It is only 2 years. 5-year survival rate is only 2 years. Next is cholangiocarcinoma. Cholangiocarcinoma is the malignancy of the biliary tree arising from bile ducts within and outside the liver. The risk factor for cholangiocarcinoma are infestation of the liver, flukes, chronic inflammatory diseases of the bile ducts such as primary sclerosing cholangitis, hepatolithiasis, and fibropolycystic liver disease. Other risk factors are patients with hepatitis B and C and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease are also at high risk of developing cholangiocarcinoma. Cholangiocarcinoma is sporadic and not associated with any pre-existing conditions. Okay. Cholangiocarcinoma may be intrahepatic or they can be extrahepatic. Extrahepatic form of cholangiocarcinoma include perihilar tumors, which are known as Kletskin tumors, which are located at the junction of right and left ducts. 50 to 60% of these tumors are known as Kletskin tumors. 20 to 30% distal tumors arising in the common bile duct arise posterior to the duodenum. These are extrahepatic form of cholangiocarcinoma. Intrahepatic form of cholangiocarcinoma, 10% are intrahepatic. Survival is only 15% after 2 years. The tumors, they come to attention due to distortion of the bile flow or because of the presence of the mass in the hilum. Hilar and distal tumor presents with symptoms of biliary obstruction, cholangitis, and right upper quadrant pain. So this is the cholangiocarcinoma. You can see a tumor present within the liver parenchyma, and you can see small vascular spaces. Okay. Okay. Pre-malignant lesions which are present with the cholangiocarcinoma are biliary intraepithelial neoplasia, which can be seen as BIL N1, N2, N3. Mucinous cystic neoplasms, intraductal papillary biliary neoplasia. Okay, rest I will explain you tomorrow. Unmute करते हैं अगर कुछ
किसी ने कोई क्वेश्चन करना है तो हैंड रेज
करें. Please raise your hand if you want to ask any questions. There are 2 minutes left. Unmute हो गए सर? कर दो तुम unmute कर दो. Okay. Kindly raise your hand if you want to ask any questions. Okay, then I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thank you.